Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl Podcast, a 3-time award-winning show that aims to motivate and inspire you while increasing the amount of female role models in the media, especially in relation to adventure and physical challenges. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. If you're passionate about adventure, challenge and learning from women who have overcome obstacles and achieved remarkable things, then this is the podcast for you. Every Tuesday at 7 a.m, new episodes go live featuring incredible women who share their stories, insights and tips to help you achieve your dreams and goals. You can support the Tough Girl mission by signing up as a patron. Visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. Keep listening until the very end as I share more information about what's going on with me with Tough Girl Challenges, give shout outs and recommend other Tough Girl Podcast episodes. More information can be found at toughgirlchallenges.com.
My name's Susan Smillie. I am first and foremost a sailor and a writer. I did work at The Guardian. I was a features editor at The Guardian, but back in 2016, I quit my job and took off to sea and started sailing my little boat. I was planning to sail around Britain and kind of ended up in Greece.
Have you always sailed? You know, what were you like when you were younger? Were you outdoorsy? Did you live by the coast? The coast? Were you sailing from a young age?
No, not at all. I didn't start sailing until my 30s, actually. I come from Dumbarton, which is a town, it's on the River Clyde. It's a town, actually, that's quite bound up with ships and sailing. And obviously the River Clyde is where the majority of shipbuilding was back in the day. I didn't get into sailing till, like I say, till early 30s, I think. My brother gave me a little boat. That's kind of what kicked it all off. I was up visiting my parents in Ariker in Loch Long, and there was a little boat outside my parents' house, and we had a flat in Brighton, my partner and I. So my brother gave me this little, just a little trailer sailor, basically, and we took it back to Brighton and thought, let's kind of get out on the sea and learn to sail.
Was your brother a sailor? How did he have a boat?
No.
No.
Oh, I think someone gave him it. It was like, my parents were living on Loch Long, and obviously there's a lot of people around there with boats and things. So I think it was just a little trailer sailor, 17 foot, and someone gave him it, or he got it really cheap or something, but he didn't really use it. And it was sitting outside my parents' house. And then I was like, oh, if you're not using that, maybe I should take it. And he was like, yeah, have it. And so we took it back to Brighton and spent a long time working on it and then put it in the sea at the showroom. And then when we did that, we noticed we were looking to buy a flat at the time, and I was working in the arts, so I wasn't earning, very, very low salaries, and we couldn't really afford a flat. And we noticed in Brighton Marina people living on boats, and we were like, oh, wow. And as soon as I saw that, I kind of thought, oh my God, I would love to do that. As soon as I saw it, it was like a light bulb moment where I was like, oh my God, I live on a boat. Yes, please. So although I hadn't had any background with boats, I always loved the sea. I went to university in Brighton, and, part of that was about being near the sea. So we ended up buying a boat to live on. And then when we were on the sea, of course, you kind of get drawn further and further towards sailing, I guess. And I met someone in Brighton Marina who taught sailing and started taking this little boat out with him, and just kind of started feeling my way into it. That would be in my 30s. So it was just kind of like something that started then.
So you had 2 boats, one you were living on, and then the one that your brother gave you, like the little trailer sailor.
That's right. Yeah.
For people who are technical, I'm not technical with boats. The trailer sailor, what type of boat was it? Or is that the technical name for it?
No, it's called a Lysander. It was a little marine plywood boat. I mean, it was very basic.
So you're living on the boat, you're spending more time in and around water, you're getting lessons. When did you start getting this idea or start having this dream to take your sailing to, I suppose, the next level and take on a new type of challenge?
Fast forward a little bit here. I moved to London because I got the job at The Guardian. And so ended up moving with the boat from Brighton round to live in the Thames and for work, basically. I really missed being by the coast. And then my partner and I bought another boat. Actually, this little one my brother gave me, I gave it away to a cousin of mine. It seems to be a tradition. This little boat got passed around. And we bought a Nicholson, which is a bigger boat, but still small. It's 26 feet. And it's a classic sort of 1960s, 1970s design. And It's a kind of proper, very, very small, but a proper seagoing boat, and wanted to learn to sail properly with that boat. And then we bought that while I was living in London. My partner and I split up when I was 40, actually, just turned 40. And I kind of thought, we'd always gone out on the boat together, and I was kind of just really wanting to learn to take the boat out myself, and I guess we'd learn together, but there was a lot of stuff that I left to him, a lot of the technical stuff, a lot to do with the engine and to do with the rigging and stuff like that I wasn't really interested in, and thought I couldn't really, I don't really have that kind of technical brain. So I was quite daunted by the idea of learning all of that stuff myself, but was so in love with the sea and so in love with the boat that I thought I have to do something about this, because I don't want to lose this passion that I have for sailing and for the sea, but I need to gain some confidence to go out by myself, or not by myself at first, but actually to be in charge of the boat, to take friends out where I was the person responsible, because obviously it's not, it can be quite dangerous, especially if you're taking people out who don't know about boats. I was in London thinking, right, I need to kind of like get out and start doing this by myself. And at that point, I had this little boat down in Brighton, the second boat, the Nicholson, that we'd bought.
Like your early 40s, going through this, to be honest, a couple of major changes, like new job, moving to London, the end of a relationship, and then gaining these new skills and gaining this new confidence, which I absolutely love, like how proactive you were to actually go out and do this, and like, actually I'm gonna figure this out. What happened after that? Like, how did you decide that you think, actually, yeah, I need to make some other changes, I need to quit my job, I want to go spend time sailing more? What happened in that interim? Was this planned? Was it more circumstance? What did that look like?
It wasn't, there was a certain amount of planning, I guess, but really it was quite spontaneous. What happened really was that I was becoming less and less happy with my life in London. I was single, and I was kind of like, that thing when you're in a relationship where you kind of, maybe you lose contact with friends, and you kind of, when we broke up, I sort of had to start again a bit. I found that I was kind of spending a lot of time on my own. A lot of the friends that I'd had were also coupled up, and I was kind of, just kind of trying to spend ways to fill my time, and feeling a little bit lonely, if I'm honest, and a little bit unsure of myself. And work was good, and I had a lot of things going on socially, but I was a little bit lost, I think, actually. And the kind of atmosphere, it was, when things came to a bit of a head, I guess it was around about the Brexit time as well, where the atmosphere generally was quite difficult. And I was working at the Guardian, so I sort of like couldn't escape the news agenda, and it was just so kind of oppressive. That time when I can't remember the order in which it happened, whether Trump got in first and then we got Brexit, I think. But I just kind of remember, like, everything felt quite heavy. But what I had was this little boat in Brighton. I was obsessed with it, and just to be able to escape down there and get out to sea, I was just falling more and more in love with it. And it was kind of like this lightness, amidst all this heaviness in London, and this kind of reasonably kind of like difficult time, I guess. And then getting out on the sea, and because I was starting to just kind of like find friends that were a bit experienced to help me learn, just how to take the boat on and off the pontoon without doing any damage and things like that. So my confidence started to grow in this area, and that was sort of like doing wonders for my self-esteem, I suppose, because I was throwing myself into something that I just loved, and escaping this kind of like life in London where maybe there was like the news agenda, everything was quite heavy. I was maybe like drinking a little bit too much, trying to keep myself busy, going out socializing, because I was suddenly single, thinking, what am I doing to fill my time? And then I found this much healthier, happier way to fill my time, which was like, maybe became a little bit obsessive too, where I was kind of like running off to sea, learning more and more, getting more and more confident with my boat. And yeah, it kind of just took over to the point where I sort of like started to feel a bit resentful about having to leave it and go back to work. I was kind of like, oh, well, I have to go and sit in an office in King's Cross now. Why?
When did you decide to quit the job?
It was 2016. At the Guardian, we'd had the option of voluntary redundancy come up over the years quite a few times, and I never ever thought I would take it, because it was kind of like, I got a job at the Guardian, it's my dream. I just wouldn't leave that. But somehow over the years, the situation I just described, things sort of came to head, and I just thought, I kept telling myself, oh, this is my dream job. I'm so happy. But when you keep telling yourself something, it's maybe, it's kind of like, but am I happy? Like, why do I keep telling myself I'm really happy in this job, in this life, when actually what I feel, what's really making me happy, what's filling my heart is being out on the water on my boat and being amongst nature and sailing this little boat and seeing dolphins and just, that's real true happiness, and it's not being in a desk in London.
It can be really hard though when other people are looking at your life or maybe they know it's like, well, that's your dream job. Like you're doing what you wanted to do. You've got this incredible newspaper with this reputation and, you're writing all these amazing stories and it's like, and like, I definitely had it when I was working where it was almost like this forced happiness. No, I should be happy. I should be happy. I am happy. I am happy. And then I am happy with the tears pouring down my face on like a Sunday evening with like the Sunday blues kicking in. And you probably start, I mean, I definitely remember like you start having, I suppose not to numb the pain, but you start having a few more glasses of wine and you just go out a little bit more. And it's like, well, this is what everyone else is doing. So why aren't I happy?
Yeah.
In terms of that decision-making process, the fact that this redundancy offer was coming up, like, and how did you decide to go for it? Because many people can have like a dream or an ambition, but actually taking the step can be really quite scary.
I kind of remember the moment where I had decided, and it had been coming gradually for quite a while. And I've got a friend, I don't know if you know her, Kat Vinton. She's this amazing adventure photographer, and she has this project where she goes around the world photographing nomads. And basically, her and I were always off on adventures. And when it was finished, we were off. I was writing about Jason DeCaire's Taylor, or we were writing about sea nomads, the Moken in Thailand, and she was taking the photos and I was writing features. And we'd finish these amazing trips, and then she would go off to some other amazing trip to do something else extraordinary, and I'd be going back to London, and I would be like, oh God, why am I doing this? I think Kat, kind of like her lifestyle really inspired me and encouraged me, I think, because she was so free. And I would kind of see her going off doing one amazing thing after the other. And I think that was one thing that happened. And so I think she always quietly encouraged it as well. And she was kind of like, oh yeah, I know you don't want to be sitting in King's Cross. You want to be out here with seals and dolphins. And the other thing that happened is while I was sailing, I took my boat west and I was sailing. I met this amazing woman called Debbie in Weymouth, actually. And she'd been to university, done an art degree, but she had chosen, instead of kind of going off into a career like that, she had chosen to live on this small boat and to work over the winter, just doing odd jobs like working in bars and things like that, so that she could subsidise a life of freedom where she was sailing around and picking mussels. And, she didn't have a lot of money, but she was really, really happy and she was really, really free. And I guess the combination of these women following what they believed in and following their passion, following their heart, really inspired me. And I kind of thought, because you just don't do that, you kind of like, you get used to being if you're in a career, or quite a competitive career like the media, you end up sort of like, you don't kind of think of other possibilities and other paths. You just kind of think this is what we do. You work hard to get here, and so you should be lucky to be here, and in a way you are, and you don't think about giving up until you actually see people doing something better. And for me, they were both doing something much more inspiring. They were doing what they believed in, and they had so much freedom, and I just wanted that. And so it was a gradual thing. Like, I knew Kat for years, and we'd always kind of had these things, and I'd always had to trudge back to King's Cross and felt more and more resentful of it. And so I remember the moment, to get back to your question, when I kind of realised the time is now, because Kat and I had often talked about it, and I'd kind of been like, one day I'm going to leave and be free. And then we were in Lanzarote, and we were sitting having coffee, and we'd been diving, because Jason DeCaire's Taylor, I don't know if you know him, but he's this incredible sculptor, and he had Europe's first underwater museum, and we were out covering that story. And I just sort of said to Kat, that's it, I'm ready. And she totally knew what I meant. I didn't have to say any more. And I just remember that was the moment I thought, I don't want to go back to my job. I don't want to go back to being an editor. I want to do what makes me happy, what I love. And that doesn't involve working full time for The Guardian. That involves being free on the sea.
In terms of being free, it's easy to say that sometimes there are realities, whether that's property, retirement, having
Yeah,
no
yeah,
debt, having funds saved up, like having a security blanket or having, family and friends that you can live with if all, doesn't turn out the way that you expected it to be.
yeah. It's scary, isn't it? That's why I hadn't ever done it before. That's why I stayed. It wasn't just that I kind of loved the fact that I had this job that I loved. It was also the security of having a job, and the idea of kind of giving all that up is really scary. That's why it took me, quite a while to get to that point, I guess, because you think, well, what am I going to do for money? Frankly, it's like I got the redundancy, but it only lasts so long. In the end, I just thought, yeah, I don't have kids. Like my partner and I had broken up. I didn't have children. Also, I lived on a boat in London, so I didn't have a mortgage because I'd chosen, you know, reasonably like a very cheap way of living. But at the same time, that also meant that I didn't have like a big, I don't have an investment in property like a lot of my friends have. There's people with sort of 250,000, 500,000 pound houses that they can kind of rely on as an investment. But I guess, yeah, I just sort of really had a trust that things have a tendency to work out. If you kind of just follow what you want to do and you just decide to be a bit brave about it and think, I'm not going to worry about all of this. I kind of, I'm going to take this redundancy. It's an opportunity. You don't get redundancy that often these days. That's lucky in itself to get a lump sum that you can do something with. And when that money runs out, I'll kind of get odd jobs. I kind of thought about Debbie, this woman that I'd met, and she made it work. And because living at sea can be very cheap, it's kind of what I kind of realized is that actually you don't need a lot of money to be happy. You can live very, very simply and be really, really, really happy. The other thing I realized, but I didn't realize this until I'd started, like I was off on the boat in my new life, but it actually costs quite a lot of money to go to work. It's kind of, I sort of think about, especially if you're not that happy anymore, because I remember sitting in the Guardian, before the first news meeting, I'd have to go to Pret and I'd have to get an almond croissant and a coffee just to be sitting at my desk feeling okay, just to get through the meeting, just to, you end up in these habits that end up being so expensive. And then at lunchtime, I would be going and spending, I don't know, £15 maybe sometimes on lunch, and getting to work's expensive, getting home. You end up spending an awful lot of money just to kind of get through the 9 to 5 existence, I think, because if you're not doing something that makes you happy, you need to try and find other ways to make yourself happy. And a lot of those habits, apart from not being very healthy, also cost quite a lot of money. Of course, the money thing and giving up the security and everything else was a bit scary, but maybe I didn't realize until after I'd done it. But financially, it wasn't as, it's not as scary as you think. I don't think it's not. Along with the income come a lot of expenditures and a lot of ties that we also don't need financially.
Totally agree. I was literally thinking, yeah, sometimes I felt as though I was doing like cosplay, like I'm like dressing up as this smart businesswoman.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, I was like, right, yeah, and food, booze, clothes, shoes,
Yeah.
bags to put on the image or the mask of who you're trying to be, and then to progress, you go, oh, let's
Oh my God, yeah. It's so expensive. When I think about the years since then, when I've just been sailing around with my little boat, I don't know when I must have gone for at least a year without or longer without buying any clothes. And I spent most of my, especially when I sailed south, and I ended up just spending all my time in a bikini, staring at, staring at clams. It's kind of like I'm not spending any money and I'm happier than I've ever been.
So your book is called The Half-Bird, One Woman's Voyage of Self-Discovery from Land's End to the Shores of Greece. Take us to, I suppose, Land's End, the start. This was Land's End the start of the journey?
No, actually, well, God, I don't know how far back to go, but I guess the start of the journey probably was going from Brighton heading west. And that's kind of during that journey that I kind of had this epiphany where I ended up giving up my job and going off full time on my little boat. And I left my boat for the summer in Dartmouth. Maybe that's the kind of the real start of the journey, is heading west from Dartmouth towards Land's End, where I was planning to turn right and head up towards Scotland. I mean, I gave up my job with a very loose plan. I'm not a planner really, but I kind of thought I'm going to I just want to keep doing this basically, not have to go back to work. So I'm going to sail along the coast, get help where I can because I'm still not massively experienced, especially for the more difficult passages like the Lizard Point, Portland Bill, Land's End, all these quite treacherous patches of water, and heading north up the coast of Britain. And I can get help for the bits that I'm scared about, take shelter, take my time, just like don't think of it as a big journey, but like a series of day sails. So that was the loose plan. But I got to Land's End and I ended up there for weeks because I think I'd left. It turned out that I'd left my job and set off sail in the wettest summer that Britain has had ever at that point, which would be 2017 by the time I left. And I got to Land's End and I got stuck for 5 weeks in storms. And the storms out there, I don't know if you spent much time there, but they're really terrific. It's kind of like these big Atlantic weather systems coming in. So I was there for 5 weeks. And it was during that time that a different plan, I guess, started to form.
And sailing wise, because I've not a sailor, but this is what I've heard that, or maybe I've heard it more from the rowers, that the currents around the UK are really, really challenging.
Yeah.
For sailors. And I'm just wondering, is it harder to sail around the UK or is it harder to sail to Greece through the Med? I mean, I know obviously one is a lot further going to Greece, but
Sure.
once you've got over to sort of Europe and France and Bay of Biscay.
Yeah.
And then down the coast of like Portugal, etc. Is that would it be easier to go left than it was to right? And obviously you're going into nice weather as well, so that's a real plus.
It can be. I mean, it's the thing about sailing in sea state is just it kind of really always depends when you go and what you go out in. It almost always comes down to weather, but certainly Britain, the coast of Britain is one of the toughest, one of the most challenging. Also the coast of Brittany, also of course the Bay of Biscay. I mean, you get treacherous and difficult and challenging places everywhere, but broadly speaking, I guess one of the reasons that I kind of felt I could do it as well is because I met someone at Land's End and he said, you're thinking about sailing north, also time of year, it was the end of August. It was like you'll be sailing north into winter and that's going to be really hard. And the Irish Sea is especially difficult and dangerous. And sailing south will be a lot easier. You're kind of like, it gets warmer the further south you go. I kind of thought, oh, that sounds nice. I mean, there are difficult places sailing wise everywhere. Even the Med, actually, when you go into the Med, a lot of sailors don't go in there because it could be a real nightmare to sail in the Med. You kind of think it'll be easier because there aren't tides. I mean, very, very minimal tides in there, but it's not kind of the massive tidal range that we've got around Britain, for instance. You're talking about currents and things like that. So that isn't an issue there. But what is difficult there is that it's quite a small sea, relatively speaking, compared to, the Atlantic Ocean, obviously, and bigger stretches of sea around Britain. It's relatively small but it means that you have these kind of very short, steep waves that just pummel you. And also all of the lands and all of the islands in this relatively small area create lots of kind of crazy winds. You've kind of got the warm land baking under the sun and then the cooler water. And so you get these crazy wind systems that make the Med quite difficult and quite challenging and also very frustrating because you can go from 5 knots of wind to 30 knots of wind back to 5 knots of wind. And you're like, oh, it can be it can be tricky, the Med. I mean, I think everywhere has different challenges.
Tell me about life on the boat. Like, is it relaxing, stress-free? Is it what you thought it was going to be like? Or was it, I want to say, like, brutal storms, running out of food? What was life on the boat like? Maybe some of the high points, but also maybe some of the challenges and the realities that maybe people don't necessarily speak about?
Sure. Like I said, the winds go from 5 knots to 30 knots in the Med. And it's kind of like sailing's a bit like that. It goes from absolutely blissful, meditative, just the most beautiful, calm, amazing time to absolute sheer terror in no time at all. It can change. So you're kind of like, you're full of joy and then you're screaming, maybe a couple of minutes later. and then it all passes and you're fine again. It's absolutely beautiful. I loved it. I have so many. When I first set off, particularly, I was on a high the whole time. I was so excited just to be waking up in these idyllic little bays that you can imagine, surrounded by wildlife, just watching dolphins or seals or listening to the birds, and then and then you're kind of like on a journey, and then a squall comes, and then you're absolutely screaming and wondering why on earth you would put yourself in your boat in this situation in danger, or clinging on for dear life at times where you make mistakes, which I made many, many, many mistakes and learned an awful lot. I mean, on the way is kind of where I learned to sail, really. And yeah, it can kind of, it goes from it's extreme highs and lows. And I kind of, the main part is just like idyllic and blissful, but there are moments of terror as well, where you're kind of just, things can go wrong very quickly at sea.
You mentioned when you were living in London that you sort of felt lonely and you felt lost at times.
Mm.
Now you're on the middle of an ocean or in a bay on your sailing boat. Did you feel lonely still, or had something changed inside of you?
Yeah, I didn't actually. When I was actually alone, because I suppose in those times in London, I wasn't really alone when I was lonely. I was kind of, I think for me, I don't know if it's the same for everyone, but for me, I guess it was more about maybe how I felt about myself. Possibly it was getting to a point in life where I wasn't quite sure anymore about who I was or what I was doing. And but when I was off on my boat, I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew who I was in. And really, I guess because I was learning, I'd managed to learn things about the boat that made me feel very proud of myself, like mostly the kind of technical stuff, which I'm still terrible at, to be honest. But and half of the time I would just be bodging things and trying to, just to make it work at sea, which you kind of have to do anyway. But and I'm still not good with the engine. I'm still not good with lots of technical stuff, even with sailing and rigging and things like that. But I got through, and I kind of like learned enough to get myself out of trouble. Like I learned, for instance, just at the entrance to the Canal du Fort in Brittany, which is quite a challenging passage. I lost my engine, and it was foggy and there was no wind to sail. So I was suddenly drifting in this kind of like rock and come at the entrance to this very treacherous rocky place. And because I didn't have the time to convince myself, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know how to do technical things, I can't do it. I just went down and I played the engine, which is like just a fiddly, annoying little thing to do, but not that easy. And actually, I know a lot of people. I met all these Navy guys that had no idea how to bleed their engines, and I was kind of thinking, yeah, I think because I learned how to do stuff that I really thought I'd never learn like that. I was really, really happy with myself and really pleased with myself. And on this adventure where I was kind of, I'd gained this independence, I'd found so much resilience that I didn't know I had. And so I was really, it was just like a kind of on a high for a lot of it, but also just really, really calm in wildlife and in nature and appreciating that and really feeling like I'd earned my place there, that I had, because I had learned these things that I thought I'd never learned, that I was, look where I've taken myself. Look, I'm in this little bay alone watching dolphins. And I never felt lonely or scared to be alone. I felt like the privilege of being there and pride that I'd taken myself there. So I think that was the thing about loneliness for me, is that, I didn't feel it anymore when I was actually alone on the boat. And also because I was with my boat and I was kind of like, it's me and Ishan.
I think the other thing, which because I've definitely felt those same sort of feelings of feeling like lonely and lost. And one of the things that changed for me is like finding like a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
It changed everything when it's suddenly like,
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. I know why I'm doing it. And it's almost like this, like for you, like you're out, you're sailing, you're on your boat, you're learning lessons, you turned left instead of right.
Sure.
Did you know that you were aiming for Greece, or, was that more just like, oh, okay, well, let's sail down to Lisbon first. And then, like,
No, God, no, I didn't.
no.
I didn't even see that far ahead. I was in Land's End and I thought, oh, well, yeah, maybe I can get across the channel. It was 100 miles pretty much from Land's End to Brittany. And I thought, well, hopefully I reckon I can get there. And then maybe I'll have a little adventure there for winter and come back. I didn't even really think that I would get much further, but, like the Canal du Fort and the Radisson Brittany's got some really treacherous areas. And once I kind of sailed around there, it was kind of like, well, yeah, I mean, I just keep going, it's just kind of like you get caught up with the adventure, don't you, sometimes? And it is that sense of purpose and a drive where you kind of think, oh, I just really felt like I was flying at that point. I think I was kind of like, yeah, yeah, keep going, keep going. How far can I get? I was sort of listening to people along the way as well and sort of listen to people who were saying, oh, there's a great place that people anchor for winter down near Spain. And I was thinking, oh, well, maybe I'll try and go there. I mean, I'm not a planner. I kind of got good at planning when it came to sailing and when it came to the tides and the state of the moon and the weather and the wind forecasts. I got very good at planning that. But in life, generally, I wasn't much of a planner. So it just unfolded as I went on. It's like that sense of purpose you're talking about. I think we humans, we need that. We need to feel productive. Like there's a balance, there's a balance of like doing stuff and kind of like relaxation that you don't want to feel like you're on holiday all the time. You feel like we feel better when we're doing something, I think, and a journey in itself gives you that, doesn't it? It gives you a kind of sense of purpose every day. And I very much had that because I was thinking the whole time, I was thinking, well, I want to get to the Radisson during spring tides, when the conditions are calmer. And now I want to get to Portugal and I want to get there before the winter because I don't want to be caught in a big Atlantic storm sailing down the coast of Spain and Portugal. I want to try and get to the Algarve before the winter weather really sets in. So I had a constant kind of like, from that point of view, from a weather point of view, I very much had a plan and an aim. Once I'd kind of decided that's what I was doing.
Why did your journey end in Greece? Was there a reason?
Not really. I just didn't really have any plan. I suppose in some ways it sort of stopped there, probably partly because of lockdown. Actually, when everything stopped.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I got to Greece. I hadn't necessarily planned to go to Greece, but then it became a bit of a destination because it's like, well, Odysseus is a sailing ground. It's beautiful. Everyone loves Greece. It's amazing. There are so many islands and, I kind of wanted to get there. But so many times along the way, in Portugal, I kind of thought maybe I should stay here. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. I don't know about going into the Med because it's quite it's very different from the Atlantic and I really loved the Atlantic. And then I was in the Med and it was kind of like, I loved Sardinia and then I loved the volcano islands. I kind of thought, oh, maybe I could settle here. And then it was but I always kind of had that drive to keep exploring and keep going because it was such it was just so much of an adventure. And so you kind of find yourself, Greece feels like a really, really cool place to go. And yeah, so then I got to Greece and I got down to the Peloponnese and then the pandemic happened. So that kind of actually stopped me, I guess.
Is that when you started writing your book?
No, several things happened actually. I got down there and then I ended up in the north of Greece and then another lockdown happened. I mean, it's a kind of funny thing because for all of us, everything feels quite slightly strange. When looking back on that time, everything's disjointed. Time feels a little bit weird. It's like a great big pause that we all went through that kind of distorts everything. And it's kind of funny looking back now and thinking, gosh, actually, I was only really sailing for over 2 years of that time before lockdown kind of put a stop to it. I ended up in the north of Greece and for the second lockdown. And but actually, I ended up. My father had a heart attack, and I had to fly back to Scotland. So I spent a year with him. So that kind of, everything kind of stopped for all of these reasons. The journey kind of paused, I guess, because of all of that. And he's good. Just to add, he's doing well. But yeah, that was kind of, life can just throw us in unexpected directions, and so that was one of them.
So you then flew back to Greece, and is that when you started writing, or did you pitched editors before, or had you been writing sort of all the way through, I suppose, your journey as a way to process and reflect, and obviously being a writer as well?
No, God, I hadn't. I had sailed away from my job, and I had sailed away from the media and from journalism, and thought, oh, I don't want to record because originally I thought about writing on the way. I was thinking about potentially doing a column for my boss at G2 at the time. But I'm so glad I didn't because it would have changed the journey so much if you were kind of like, it turns it into work almost. And I just wanted to be free. I didn't want to write. I wanted to leave all that behind me and just be like in wildlife and not thinking about deadlines and I have to write something today, or I should go here because it would make interesting copy. I just wanted to live it. I wanted to let it unfold and not be influenced by any of that stuff. What I did do, which proved very useful when it came time to write the book, is I was on social media, so I was putting stuff on Instagram a lot and often writing quite long captions about how I felt. It was like I would be so full of joy. I felt like I wanted to express that. And also for connection, I made so many friends on Instagram, particularly, who, when I did write something for The Guardian now and then, I would write a feature, and I would then make lots of connections on Instagram, people who would find me through that. And they would often be sailors or people who knew about wildlife. And so, that was really lovely. But when it came time to write the book, that provided that proved really useful because I've got quite a bad memory as well. And I'd look back and think, oh God, yeah, I remember this and I remember that. And, just a photo often would be enough to take me back to that moment. But I started writing the book, actually, an agent contacted me through a very, very tiny little piece I'd written for The Guardian about going off to sail. And an agent contacted me and said, I think you should write a book, shouldn't you? And I was like, yeah, I probably should, actually. Because you kind of, we talked a little bit about a sense of purpose. And there were times, even though I was having the most amazing journey, and there were times where I thought, what am I doing? What is my purpose? And it felt like I don't want to just be on holiday all the time. And also I do need to think about trying to earn a bit of money, because the redundancy money lasted an awful long time because I had, I didn't spend anything, and I kind of made it stretch much further than I thought. But I kind of, not so much for money, more for a sense of purpose, more for like, who am I and what am I doing? And writing is something that I love. And I've sort of found my way back to that, I guess. So actually, I had this agent, and then what happened was, when I got the phone call, that my dad had had a heart attack, and it was during lockdown. It was a horrendous time I had to get myself back to Scotland, and it was really, really, really difficult. I remember lying on the floor at Athens airport, and my agent messaged me and said, oh, you've got an offer from Penguin. And there was a few offers that had come in, but I'd had a meeting with the guys at Penguin and really liked the editor there. And so normally, where I would have been like, really happy about that, I was kind of on my way back to my dad, really, really worried about him. And I just remember getting this message and going, well, I can't write it right now, I mean, I was just kind of like, I've got my dad to think about. And he was like, don't worry, it's fine. They were really, really patient. But in the end, I guess I'd started writing the book in Greece, and then I really wrote it at my dad's during that year that I spent with my dad back in Scotland, which really affected the book, actually, in what I wrote.
In what way?
In that it was, I mean, reflecting on the journey that I'd made, but also there was a lot more family, a lot, the conversations that I would have with my dad. I got into this really lovely routine of going swimming. I got into cold water swimming because, I had to, because the Clyde in April is freezing and I needed the sea. And I thought, well, it was a strange thing of being back at my dad's and being like, oh, who am I now? This thing where you kind of think, I'm a journalist, no, now I'm a sailor. And it's like, oh, well, now I'm back at my dad's. What's happening now? But I had the book to write, and I was going swimming every single day. So I got into this routine where I would go out swimming, and there would be seals, and then I would come back and I'd sit in the garden and have coffee with my dad, and we'd be chatting about the birds and chatting about a lot of his memories of his father. And so all of this kind of stuff came together and influenced the book and the way the book was written, so that it became more than, just an account of a journey, I guess. It became more memoir, more kind of like family. I talk quite a lot about grief and about family in the book as well. And so I guess that was very much shaped by place, by where I was. I mean, I wrote the book in several locations, I suppose, because I was back at my dad's and then I was in London. And each time I went to a new place, it would bring back all of the memories of being there. So the parts that I wrote in London, I was on the Thames on a boat, and I was watching seals in the Thames, and I was kind of, we're very much affected by where our environment, I think, and where we are. So I think it would have been a very different book if I'd written it in Greece. But it was kind of like a journey. Writing the book was a journey through my past as well, and that really influenced the writing.
Is there a reason for the title? Is there something behind the title, The Half Bird?
Sure. Well, the boat is called Aishin, which means little chick in Gaelic. And she's like a bird, really, the way that she soars and moves through the water. as boats often are. They're so graceful, and it often felt like flying, sailing. And then there was an idea that came out in the writing that was kind of like, the longer I'm at sea and the more time I spend on my boat, it's kind of like I'm half boat, half woman. I felt like the boat and I were two halves of the same thing, that we were flying together. And then there was references to Greek myth and the sirens, of course, which were originally, I think now people always think of the sirens as being sort of these mermaid type creatures, but actually in Greek myth they were half birds, half women. And so it's kind of, I guess, a reference to all of those things and all of those images. It's a beautiful title, I think, and the cover is absolutely gorgeous. I really love how they did it. The sail reflected in the water, and so it kind of looks like a bird flying. And I absolutely love the cover. I'm very lucky.
And Susan, where are you most active on social media? Where can people buy the book? Where should they go?
I'm on Instagram, and of course, you can buy the book wherever you buy books, but I would always, always recommend that you support a bookshop, because I've always loved bookshops, but having written a book myself, I now see the amazing amount of work that booksellers do. So ideally an independent bookshop, but certainly any bookshop I would recommend. And of course, people buy people buy them online wherever they buy them, and we're grateful for any sales. So.
And your Instagram is @SmileOnSea, which is beautiful. So your surname on sea.
Smiley on sea, yeah.
Smiley on sea, smile.
Smiley on sea.
Smiley on sea, Smiley on sea.
I thought it sounded like a place that you would want to be, Smiley on sea.
And Susan, I'd love for you to have the final words of advice, final words of wisdom for other women who want to take on a new travel challenge. They want to make some changes in their life. What advice would you have for them? But please don't say just do it.
Yeah, I think the thing is not to be daunted. Maybe don't think of too far into the future. Certainly for me, it was kind of like, just think, when I thought about the journey, it's very, very daunting if you think of a journey, I want to kind of like go all the way to Greece. But if you think about steps, I think it's, maybe it sounds cliched and it's what everyone says, but cliches are often there for a reason. Is like just that first step, just go out and try something. You can do much more than you think you can.
Oh, God, absolutely. You can do so much more than you think you can. Susan, thank you so much for coming on Tough Girl Podcast. It's been amazing to speak to you, and just best of luck with all your future sailings and future writing and books. And I'm excited to see where the future takes you.
Thank you so much.
Hey tribe, I really hope you enjoyed that episode with Susan and it's inspired you to think about your next adventure, whether it is sailing or taking on a different type of challenges. I think there's just so much great information that Susan shared with us. And if you haven't done so already, then I'd also really recommend that you do go and read her book, The Half-Bird, One Woman's Voyage of Self-Discovery from Land's End to the Shores of Greece. So there's a little quote around the book which says, "We have no idea how much resilience there is inside us until we have to draw on it. We learn that we grow through adversity only as we go through it, that we crave happiness like plants leaning towards the light." Just such an incredible story. Now, also, if you are interested in sailing as well, I have spoken to numerous sailors throughout the years on the Tough Girl podcast. If you visit toughgirlchallenges.com, there's a resources section dedicated to sailors. And this can be from Melissa Harlow, she embracing life's adventures at 62 from sailing the Pacific Ocean. We spoke with Katrina Megget. She shares more about her battle with self-doubt and self-worth and walking the Te Aroa Trail in New Zealand and sailing around Great Britain with her partner on a 28-foot boat. Julie Bradley, she's author of Escape from the Ordinary. She retired from the US Army at age 40 to sail around the world for 8 years with her husband. We've also spoken with Tracy Edwards, MBE. She's a round-the-world sailor and social activist, currently running the Maiden Factor Foundation, fighting for the rights of all girls to an education. Emily Penn, she's an ocean advocate and skipper working on solving the plastic pollution crisis, and she's the co-founder of eXpedition. There is the incredible Pip Hare. She's a single-handed ocean racer who she shared more about preparing for the toughest race on the planet, the Vendée Ocean race. There's Captain Sophie Hollingsworth. She's a former ballerina turned award-winning explorer. She's a Fulbright scholar. She's a fellow of the Explorers Club and a postgrad fellow of RGS. And Pip Hare, she's a professional ocean racing sailor who was part of the all-female team who won the Three Peaks yacht race in 2016. That is just a very, very tiny glimpse of some of the sailors that we've spoken to on the Tough Girl podcast. So please do go and check it out. Just going to give you a little heads up about my current challenge that I am taking on, which is called Glyndor's Way, which is a national trail. It is a 135-mile, 217-kilometre trail that completes a loop from Knighton to Welshpool. So if you picture the UK and you've got Wales, where UK and Wales join, that pathway there along that way is called Offa's Dyke, which I've walked previously. About halfway up, there are two sort of towns on the Offa's Dyke stretch called Knighton and Welshpool, and you can actually walk from Knighton sort of going out into Wales and around and back again to Welshpool. So it's almost like a loop. You could join up the loop if you wanted by walking from Knighton to Welshpool via Offa's Dyke path. I'm not going to do that this time. I'm just going to walk Glyndor's Way, the 135-mile loop. I will be vlogging the challenge. I will be sharing the challenge on social media. So please do come and follow along with me at Tough Girl Challenges. Really, really excited to take on this walk. As you probably know, new episodes of the Tough Girl podcast go live every Tuesday at 7 a.m. UK time. So please do make sure you hit that subscribe button. I would love for you to tell one friend about the Tough Girl podcast. That is the best way to spread awareness. You can also share on social media. Tag me on your Instagram stories at Tough Girl Challenges. Share with your friends on Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, Twitter, or X, any social media platform that you are on and you've learned something from listening to Tough Girl podcast. Please do share it. Please do tell your friends. It really does make a world of difference. If you'd like to support the work that I do, then please visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl podcast, and you can support the mission to increase the amount of female role models in the media, especially in relation to adventure and physical challenges. Thank you for all the incredible patrons and supporters out there. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. All that's left for me to say is, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, give it your all. Give it 110%. Get after it. Go for it. Believe in yourself because I believe in you. Take care. Lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.